Hello, 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 friends. Guess what? It's Monday and we're here and we're getting to hang out with one another. I'm so excited about Monday. It just finally here in Florida, fall has hit us. It was actually cool outside. Like it's going to get down into the 50s and I can dream of s'mores once more, and I'm so thrilled. It changes everything when you get a little bit of cool air and it calms everything down. Like we just become a little bit more chill. Plus, it's October and Halloween is creeping up on us, and Halloween is when you get to dress up and be wild and wacky and do crazy things. But it also reminds me of how important it is, besides like Halloween where we do the big dress up when we go extravagant and crazy and whatnot, but to every day become and dress ourselves and become the person that we want to be, right? We get to be who we are, that we decide what we want to wear, we decide how we want to act, and it's this performance that we put on that allows us to live our life, to feel like we're in our own skin. And I hope that's the approach we take every week, right? That we get to have this ownership, this creation of ourselves, instead of just kind of going through the motions, answering emails, showing up at work, right? But it's this opportunity to realize the choices we make to craft this amazing human being that each of us becomes. And I know sometimes we don't feel so amazing. Every time I check another email or Discord message, I feel like it's one more thing, it's one more thing. But it's all these little things that compile into who we are. And I love that. And each week here on Pink Pixels, we get to break down all of those little complications, all of those things that just add up, that make us who we are. And so today we have not one, but two amazing guests who we're going to break down, who have been influential into the gaming space, who are continuing to make waves and will gain many points of inspiration with us this evening. So if you would all be ever so kind, please help me welcome the amazing Ashley and the amazing Krystin of Squirrely Roo Rabbit. Would the two of you be ever so kind to say hello to our guests? And I hear our music playing in the background. I love it. I love it.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm the game designer and writer for our game Squirrely Rabbit.
And I'm Krystin. I do art and animation for Squirrely Rabbit.
And then this here is Squirrely Row.
I love that. No, keep going. Don't let me interrupt. Tell us more about Squirrely Roo and what you all do.
So, Squirrely Root is our debut title here at Boba Studios. We're an indie game studio based in Baltimore, Maryland, and we're women owned. And so we've been working on this game, Squirrely Roo Rabbit, for a few years now. It's a 2.5D puzzle adventure game based on color theory, which is like a really long way to say it's a game designed to look like a pop-up book. And you are playing Squirrely Roo, who lives in a forest where a group of chameleons have come and changed the colors of all the forest animals. And so Squirrely Roo teams up with outcast chameleon Cammy to track down the chameleon king and get him to change the colors back through solving like a series of environmental puzzles as you explore new lands with a bunch of different animals and colors.
I love that. I think that's amazing. This is such a creative choice and I'm glad you're breaking this down for me, because I'll be honest, when I heard this, I was like, I don't know what you mean by color. Like, and you're like, oh, it's puzzles and it looks like a pop-up book. I'm like, oh, I understand that. So you definitely are translating a lot. And I think that's interesting because in my brain, I'm like, yeah, I know stuff about video games. I've been playing video games since I was a wee child, you know? But for the two of you who probably also have an extensive gaming background, what has it been like to take that transition to go from gamer to essentially game creator, right? To these developers, the CEO positions, these mindsets that you have to say, what does it take to actually make these things come true?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I feel like with the transition has been really interesting. Like I feel like both of us are artists by trade, so it's like kind of similar to how like when you make art versus like when you enjoy it, that like you kind of look at things through a new and different lens when you start to like kind of create those things. And definitely that transition has happened with games as well. And yeah, we've just kind of been like, because we're a small team, small business. As things kind of come up that we need to do, we just kind of like will mold to fit that as best as we can. such as with like marketing and running a business. Like there's a lot that we've learned that there's like not really a guidebook for it. So
Yeah.
being flexible is really important.
Yeah. If only though. So maybe that's the next step. As you have made like a pop-up game, there's a pop-up book of like how to make your own video game.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important to us, is being like a knowledge share point, that it's like not all of us indie devs need to go out and learn everything, ourselves. And like from experiencing it, it's like if we're just open about what we've learned and like things that we've tried, and maybe things that work for us won't work for everybody, but if we share our own experience, it'll all be easier for all of us to put more games out there. And that's really what we want. That's why we made Boba Studios. We want to see like more voices similar to ours in games. And so yeah, I don't know, that's just what we're here to do, I think.
I love that. And I feel like this is a really common thread with indie studios of saying, we want to share knowledge. We want more people to make video games, right? And so what was the point where you all started and looked at each other and go, yeah, let's do this. Let's enter into the indie video game space, right? Because it's one thing to dream. It's another thing to do. And that's a huge step.
Absolutely.
I feel like you would be best to tell this story.
The two of you are so cute, by the way. The way you look at each other, like, how we want to answer this. I see the strategy. Is like, you got okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, having my own gaming company, and really like a arts company, I think is something that I've dreamed about since I was a kid. And so it kind of took me a while to settle on like where I wanted to start, because like, as Krystin said, we're both artists by trade, and so like I see myself as very much interdisciplinary, and video games are a part of that, a single part of that. And that's, I think, why I love games so much, is that games are very interdisciplinary as an art. It's like they take every art minus like culinary arts. But I guess if you make a game about food, if you're like making the devs of Overcooked, then you've got everything.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love not having to choose what I get to do, and that we kind of get to do everything. And so that's kind of what got me settled on. By the time I was leaving high school and starting college, I was like, having a video game studio is where I want to start. Yeah. And then, Boba Studios can like move on to like also have like comic books and other things like that. Yeah. That would be amazing. But I think video games are a great place to start because they house all of those things. And so Krystin and I both went to the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is actually right up the street from, where our studio is based, where we live. And we started working together. I think I was a sophomore, you were a freshman. And that was when we got paired up to make our first game together, which ironically is where the color mechanic from Squirrely Root comes from. It was a little bit different. It dealt with like color, like temperatures.
Yes.
Effectively, like if it was a warm color or a cool color, that affected your like mechanic in the game. And what you could do is you traveled through this forest that was made up of plants of warm and cool colors. Oh. And so I don't know, I think we worked on that project and we really clicked, and we kept wanting to make games together. And it was approaching my senior year, and at Micah, we all have a thesis project that's supposed to be like a culmination of the skills that you've learned during your time there. And I double majored, so I was going to have 2 thesis projects. And
Ooh.
I mean, you and I both love
more
right?
is better, right? More projects.
That is exactly what I was thinking. So fun fact, I tried to convince them to let me triple major, and it didn't work. But I'm
beginning to think you're slightly insane. I'm going to be honest.
I know. I understand. I accept that. But I was grateful when my thesis year rolled around. I did not want to do 2 projects. I was like, let's see what we can do to combine this into one. And we both love story games. We love puzzle games. And we were like, if we can make this a story game, I can get it approved for my second thesis, which was humanistic studies, where I was focusing on creative writing and art history. Versus my other one, I should explain, was video games, specifically interactive arts with a game arts concentration. And you were
I actually majored in animation with a minor in game arts.
Yeah.
What a collection of degrees.
But kind of perfect for making a studio, because I think one of our strongest points is that we while we're both artists by trade, we really complement each other's skills. Like even in the way that like when we look at the art of our game, you do like all of the character art, I do all of the graphic design and the UI design, and then we meet in the middle a little bit in the environment art. You do most of the environment art, but I can back you up in that, and it's like I don't know, it's we're overlapped in like in a great way that we don't ever have to worry about something just like, you know, being a whole or like falling through.
We actually have a
And so
nice
that was
Venn
kind of like,
diagram here, actually.
yeah.
Like just enough crossover where it needs to be, but the two of you approach it with your own takes, your own inspiration, your own insights that drives the decisions behind the game that you've created. I just want to clarify. So I'm a teacher in my full-time job. This started with the first connection of the two of you with a project in a class.
Yes.
I'm going to show this to my students later. Remember how important your class projects are.
So true. You never know who you're going to meet, and that's why we were so lucky, because I mean that's how I approached Krystin. I'm going like backwards a little bit to the. I might be a little bit crazy. I asked Krystin to meet me one day in the lounge of the video game major, and I'd gotten bubble tea because we had decided a month or two earlier that if we made a studio. Well, I guess that came later. I got bubble tea because 3 of the games that we worked on were in a bubble tea shop. And so I was like, I have this PowerPoint presentation that was basically like, will you work on thesis with me? Even though we were a year apart. So she had to sign up for an extra year of thesis, basically. Will you work on thesis with me? And if you do, can we make this a video game to launch our game studio? Also, can we launch our game studio? And
so
my bride was
packaged into one. I feel like this needed to be like a big proposal where you offered like and a cake alongside it. Like, I know this is a lot. Also, please.
Yeah, no, you're going back now. Yeah, a cake would have been a good idea. Yeah, but that's actually how we got the name Boba Studios. Is so many of the games we worked on at the start were in a bubble tea shop, and that was kind of nothing else really stuck. So as a name, we like tried for a while, but it just seemed natural for like where we started. Do you have anything you want to say about that story?
I feel like it makes the most sense with like when it leads up to the PowerPoint presentation. Like you tell that story.
It was a lot. I agree with that, but like it got us to where we are today. So thank you.
Yeah.
For not running in the other direction.
The two of you seem like such a team. Like you're very in sync. Obviously, being at school, you had opportunities where you worked with other people, but we all know like who you choose to work with, like the collaboration, that's a big part of it. Cause there's other people with like similar degree program. I mean, granted, the two of you with all the combinations, maybe not as easy to duplicate, but right, there's other people or a combination of people that you could bring in. What was it that you knew, like, this is the person that I'm willing to go into the long and arduous effort of kicking off and launching a studio and a game with them? Because that's a hell of a commitment. Let's be real.
I feel like maybe this was like too early, but I'm like, I always think back to like in the first day of class, the first class we had together, part of what we did is we did introductions. And so, you know, we would talk about, you know, our name, you know, like pronouns and what games we like to play. And I think Ashley was probably the only person in class that had picked like a creative game. And I was like, I need to be friends with you. So I actually like very intentionally like signed up to work on the project on the first day of class. So
yeah, because like I feel like the kind of games that you like to play do speak a lot about like yourself, and you can easily be friends with, I think, like people that play similar games with you. Yeah.
Well, let's go through this exercise. I want to recreate this moment. So like if I were like, I'm caustic, I use she, her pronouns. I love almost every kind of video game from Animal Crossing to Mass Effect. Fortnite makes me anxious and horror games make me cry, right? Like there we go. So let's go on to how did you all introduce? Yeah.
Do you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Krystin. I use she, her pronouns. And I really like kind of like slower paced creative games, something with like a creative element to it. So like that can be Sims, that can be like Animal Crossing, that can be like I'm playing a game now called Usagi Shima where you like design an island. It's really cute and really fun, and it just like really makes me happy to play these games. So those are the kind of games I like. I think at the time I just was like The Sims.
Yeah, I think the game that I specifically answered with was Story of Seasons. And I know like that's a game that we play a lot together, the like Story of Seasons slash if we get like the older ones, the Harvest Moon series of like taking care of little animals and little plants and
Mm-hmm.
meeting the people in the town and learning their stories. And I think that's like always meant a lot to me growing up and very representative of the games that I like to play. So I'm Ashley. I use she her pronouns. Games that I love include ones that have like really in-depth stories. From like your like 90-hour JRPG to your like The Last of Us, which is like, more concise experience, but is very heart-wrenching. And then also, like you said, The Sims, like life simulations. It's just like, I don't know, it's really fun to like step into somebody else's stories. I think that's kind of why I like story games. Is I love learning about people and like these other worlds and or games are like really cute little animals and I don't know, I love animals and so like you're saying Usagi Shima and you have your own little bunnies and I grew up with bunnies and I guess that's no surprise when you look at Squirrely Roo.
Yeah, this
Um
is like the perfect lead in. So like the two of you, of all things, hold up Squirrely Roo for us one more time. What an adorable design. Okay, so give us a full 360 here. Hold on here. So we've
okay.
got a cute little pouch, rabbit face, and a squirrel tail. Please explain the character design before we dive into the game. I think this is going to be like introduce us to Squirrely Roo, and then we're going to get into Squirrely Roo the game.
Yeah. Um Squirrely Roo, I think this kind of goes back to the question you're talking about with like how do you know there's so many people that you like work with in school and so many people you get to know during your time anywhere, whether it's school, whether it's your career, and so many people who have touched our lives that have played really important parts of it. And so one thing I do want to share is that Squirrely Roo was not our own character design. We were in thesis and worked on games with someone else in our class who makes games under the name Shademare. And he makes like a lot more like action, gritty and darker games. But his niece had her birthday coming up, and he makes games, and she wanted him to make him a video game character. And he was like, what do you want? And she was like, well, to me, the three cutest things in the world are bunnies, squirrels, and kangaroos. And he was like, well, how do I turn that into a character? And he made this concept of this character and because of the games that he makes, he never actually did anything with her. And so on our first day of thesis class, he like brought us these notes that he had and these doodles of a character. And he was like, I've never done anything with this, but if you guys want to do something with that, that would be awesome. And so you took that and ran with it and got the design we have of Squirrely Roo now. And um, she doesn't quite make a lot of sense when you think about like how somebody ended up with this. We try to be really strategic in our game of like the animals are very much like based in how the animals kind of like operate in real life,
Mm-hmm.
and I know we spend like a lot of times looking at like even like walk cycles to get them down and things like that. And so Squirrely Roo doesn't quite fit in that way, but she also absolutely does in like this magical world of she's this hybrid animal who a lot of the other animals like that isn't really seen very commonly, and so she doesn't get affected by the color mixing that's happening because she is just a bunch of different parts, and so it doesn't affect her in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up being like a really beautiful story, especially like, or if I can say that, as somebody like a game developer in this industry who like is mixed myself, I don't often get to see stories that talk about that. And so I think that's one of the really awesome things about, I don't know that we would have started with her in that and been able to wrap her into the story like that, because I don't know that I would have thought of that.
Mm-mm.
But we are super grateful to have the character that we have now because of that. And I think she adds like an amazing dimension to the story that maybe we wouldn't have been telling otherwise.
Kirsten, what has it been like to bring really Squirrely Roo to life in such a way?
Yeah. So kind of bringing her to life, we one of the things we had done at the first day of class was, we kind of decided on this concept, this character, and then from the original sketches and concepts, I had drawn like maybe like 16 different variations with like, like in different styles.
So just a few.
Just like very, very quick. Just a few, yeah. And like as we would, as a team, we would look at them together and we would kind of like pick the ones we liked the best, like the features we liked the best, and then like kind of like I would redraw them and narrow it down from there. So I think she went through like 3 or 4 iterations before we kind of landed on this final design, which was important to me because she's the main character. She's going to be like the one piece in the game that's going to have like the most assets, going to need the most animation, and she's going to be everywhere. So we have to get her perfect like before we start doing anything else. So
no pressure.
One of my favorite things about that process is something that most of our players don't know and haven't gotten to see is that Squirrely Roo, the final design of Squirrely Roo tied when we did the first or second iteration of designs with one other design, and we picked this design because the other one didn't quite make sense. But we, in spirit, and maybe if there's a sequel, have this design in mind, and we call her Coolie Roo, and she's like Squirrely Roo, but she's punk.
But
And
she's
like a leather jacket. And in my head, Cannon rides a motorcycle, but I don't know that there are vehicles in this world. But she has like sunglasses and a leather jacket, and like her hair stands up a little bit more than Squirrely Roo's does. And when we went and finally picked the design, we just couldn't make a reason why we should have Squirrely Roo when all of the other animals like don't wear clothes and like, all of the other things that you might see like in a forest, an actual forest.
Yeah.
We love her.
But maybe our next game is like a skateboarding simulator, like a Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Squirrely Roo Rabbit meets Tony Hawk. Absolutely. There's an untapped market there. I believe it.
In the original version of the game, in like our thesis version, if you broke out of the invisible walls, Squirrely Roo lost her walking animation because she was tracking the ground to see if she should be walking. And so because of that, she would just slide. And so what we did to, I don't know, I guess I can't say make it make more sense. Yeah, it's like an Easter egg, really, is we switched in a version of Coolie Roo on a skateboard. And so that if Squirrely Roo was ever sliding and like not making traction on the ground, yeah, and she would roll instead. And it made a little bit more sense in how she moved, but it's not in this version, and I think we should add it back.
Yeah. If the player like breaks the game in some way, that should be their little bonus.
Yeah.
Easter egg.
Because things happen, but having that like as a surprise, it's like even though it's a break, it's like you found a hidden chest essentially. Like, oh, it was part of the experience. We know it's gonna happen, so here we go, and we found something purposeful at the end of this road.
You break the game, but you're happy about it.
Yes. That's the exact take. Well, let's go ahead and hop into this game. Let's bring us in here because I'm excited to see it at play. So here we are. Cute little art. I love this just scene that's created. The trees, the rocks, some apples and bushes. Walk us through what it is that we're seeing here. I don't know who's driving, by the way.
I'm driving.
Kirsten's going to be driving. Yeah, this scene you're going to see pretty soon. It's Squirrely Roo's actual house. One of the cool things we want, because we want this game to look like a pop-up book, is that like all of the main menu in the chapter select is going to operate like a book, and that's not quite in it yet. But we have started with making this continue page the actual like pop-up landscape of her house. Okay. But when you click continue, we'll go into the cutscene.
Yeah. Okay, we love a good cutscene. Oh. Okay, that's fun. Ah, there it is. Okay, that's very endearing. It's also very welcoming. Like you look at this, oh, there. Okay, that's exciting. This is very adorable. Oh no. I love that so much is conveyed so far. This is impressive. Like, we look at this like that. I mean, obviously, it was a short cut scene, right? That we get into it. But immediately, like, I'm seeing a story already developed, not only just in the book itself, but like, we're introduced Squirrely World, Guru Rabbits happy carrying their acorns around. We see the explosion of fear and then sadness and like the hurt of the poor chameleon. Like, there's a whole lot. It reminds me of the efficiency of storytelling at the beginning of Up, right? Where we don't need extensive paragraphs or massive dialogue to give us a sense of the emotions that are conveyed. What was that like to say, like, this is a cutscene and the work that goes behind this? Because we had music, we had little sound. Like, I think I heard like a little squeak from Squirrely Roo at one point, and I was like, oh, my heart. What is it like to put all of that together and to do it so well? Here, we can start with an easier question. I think it is. Bella asks in chat, what engine was used to make this game?
We make Squirrelier, both the version we have now, which is in the process of being fully rebuilt from our thesis version. Both of them we used Unity to make.
Okay. So what was it like then putting all of this into Unity to tell the most adorable story already? Oh, look at.
So I think like with Unity, putting it all in, that's like kind of where we get into that. We really like games because it's kind of a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's like one of the really rewarding pieces is looking back and seeing like how all of these things are put together. But I think like and that's part of the reason why we actually started rebuilding it from the original, is that we got to do all of the pre-production this time, you know, like writing out the full script so we like knew where the game was going to go ahead of time, planning out like what mechanics are going to see in what level and how they relate to the animals who will be introduced, or the fact that like each animal is going to have a different mechanic that's affected by like what fruit they eat. And I don't know, I think that's like something that we like to think about a lot, is like all of the little like pieces that'll help convey it. And that the cutscene that we have there is actually the original one that you made. Took you like a month, I think, to make that in our thesis thing, and we haven't changed it since. But that's actually something we're going to be doing soon because it doesn't quite fit the story exactly anymore. And there are a few things like the way that we color the chameleons are a little bit different now, because we want them to actually be telling like, I don't know, like their full thing. So like the little chameleon group that you meet in the beginning, they are like representative of RGB, and so we have like two little groups of chameleons that are going on, and we have RGB and CMYK, you know, like the printing colors, and we just want to make sure that that comes across really, because a lot of the decisions we are making in this game are about color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the color palette that we do see naturally in this game. It's very visually comfortable on the eyes, but there's a lot to take in still in terms of detail. This was very beautifully crafted. Each scene feels so cohesive on end. I love it. What was it like to essentially pull this together when you started seeing the visuals come into play and go, yes, this is exactly what we envisioned?
I don't know. I think when we started, one of part of the requirements of thesis and like kind of like a good like thing to do before you start a game is to kind of like put together almost like a mood board or like an inspiration board.
Mm-hmm.
So we were looking very closely at games like Super Mario and Yoshi's Island and like literal like children's pop-up books,
Yeah.
and then like kind of the decisions that were made there on like how they chose to make it look, to make it like both like appealing and like kind of gentle too.
Right. Like our teacher like brought in his SNES. He was like, you need to play Yoshi's Island like in the original system, how it really looked, because like I know y'all played it on your Game Boys and stuff, but like you're missing part of the experience. So he was like, I'm gonna bring this in, you have to borrow it and play through the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think having that pop-up book really inspired us, and I think we wanted to have like soft colors but also natural tones, because we wanted to keep a little bit with what like the forest really looked like.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking at like storybooks like Winnie the Pooh and like a lot of these like old illustrated children's books, and one thing I think that isn't necessarily apparent here because we have such a small demo that we're showing today, but will be apparent, is that one of the things that we think about as we go through is we don't really want any world to feel the same. And so we're picking out like, well, who are the animals in the world and what are they like personality wise, what is the culture of the group and how can we reflect that in the environment, but also like can we have it at a different time of day? And so pretty much every level that you're going through in Squirrely Root is going to be at a different time of day, or if it repeats, it's going to be several. Like you might have morning, but then you might see it in another arc. But and
Y'all
that's
wanted
just
to
like
make
so
this
like
hard then, right? Like, because I think now of like how many games where it's just always daylight.
so true. You when you're making a game that's 2.5D, one thing you might not think about that we didn't think about until we saw it is that lighting only affects the 3D elements because of course it does. And so every time we change the time of day, if we want that to be affected on the 2D elements, they actually have to get hand done to match the shadows as they should be with the rest of the world at that time.
Which is where like getting that like pre-production done with the like mood
Yeah.
board and everything, like the color schemes are already picked out, so like as new assets are kind of being made for every level, like that's already kind of decided, so we don't have to like change anything
Never redo that
too much.
Right.
Okay. Whew. I love that. So keep playing, keep taking us through. We'll follow green, blue, red through this. This also reminds me, small aside of, have you guys all ever heard of the chameleon test?
No, I haven't.
It's the question when you like when you think you're a good artist, try drawing a chameleon from memory, and most people can't do like I somebody tested me that early. I'm like, I can't even remember what a chameleon's like head looks like half the time. So when you show me like that's a chameleon, that like I thought it was interesting. It makes sense in terms of like color to pick a chameleon as part of your story and development. But in my brain, I'm thinking that's a hard creature to develop versus, any other like animal out there. I'm like, chameleon is pretty difficult.
Yeah. And chameleons specifically as compared to other lizards. I feel like we know a lot more about different kinds of lizards now.
For sure, and like had to pull up so many reference images to draw like they like kind of like err on the side of looking almost dinosaur like too. It's like it's okay. There's a little bit of
the
like
reference
there.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
And the fact that like there's so many chameleons in our game, but we don't want them to all to look the same.
Yeah.
And so like how can we, like right here between them, like the different heights and different shapes and things like that might be a little bit harder to depict on a chameleon than like a bunny who can be in like 50 different colors and have like spots in their fur patterns.
Big ears or tiny ears, yeah.
Right.
Certainly a good challenge, but I love this. Kidnapped? As in snoozing with goats? Clever little writing here. So let me take this big picture, especially for people who aren't in the game making business. They look at this and go, what are some of the most important skills? Like, I know there's some technical skills on this, but what are some additional skills on top of like the actual technicalities that you think were necessary to the success of your launch?
I think like other than like if we're not talking about game development specifically, I think one of the most major things that was really imperative to our studio is that maybe it's a skill, maybe it's not a skill, but our like drive / desire to take every opportunity possible. That was something that we decided way early on. I mean, it's actually, as a student, all 4 years, I did a work study in the career development office, and I signed up for their office on purpose. Like when I found out that I would get a work study because I knew I wanted to run my own business. And one of the things, and that was something we learned from them, was that like if you are trying to make your way, you should be taking every opportunity. Like, and that might have looked different, like to what they actually might have been communicating was more like go to all the portfolio reviews and ask people, and get in contact with them and things like that. And we were like, okay, so we're going to have business cards as early as possible. We're
Mhm.
going to go to networking events and chat with people. I mean, it's scary. I think like
Yeah.
both like quiet and shy people. I think especially when we started, I think that's been one of those things that you have to kind of figure out how to like not be that, because it's really hard to get your stuff out there when you're like really quiet.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that I mean that's definitely a skill that it was really important. But going somewhere and just being there is so
Mm.
much a big part of how you get to continue to be there. Um, we went to Artscape, which is like the world's or the United States largest free arts festival, and they have it right here in Baltimore every year.
Mhm.
And they added a gamescape at some point, probably before we started going. I think it was like a year or two before we started going, and we did it because it's like right in our city. Of course, we're gonna do it, and there's like no reason not to. But that was where we met the Baltimore Gamer Symphony Orchestra, and they put on a show where they played our music, and that's something that never would have happened if we hadn't just been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like you never know who you're going to meet or how it's going to develop, but if you go and you're there, you're automatically so much more like able to receive the things that are happening out in the world, like
Yes.
the opportunities come your way.
No, I think I want to hear if you've got any more on the list, but I like to compound on that idea because it's so important. Drive, I think, is an absolute skill, right? Because it's something we can teach ourselves. Like, I got to get hungry for this. I got to push myself. I'm going to allocate my time and effort towards it because it can be really exhausting. Like, you're already in the middle of school, you're trying to work on this project, and it's like, also, I need to go to these events. I don't even know if a conversation is going to happen from it. I'm going to sit back there and eat the pretzels, at the networking events,
Right.
sort of
Right.
things. There's always a risk, and it means there's also an opportunity cost, right? It's away from working on your project. It's away from sleeping and catching up and having a well-rested brain the next day, right? Let's be
Right.
honest, right? It's the choice though to say this is worth it. This is a door that is opening. I'm going to go through as many doors as possible to see what I can
Absolutely.
get out of it. That's a lot because I think sometimes we think like, yeah, doors are open, we're going to go through it, but it's a cost at something. It always is
Yes.
a cost. And especially for those of us who are introverted, that cost feels so much higher because networking events were not made for us introverts.
Right.
So,
And not even just networking events, like showcases, like putting our game out in the world and taking it and being like, hey, everybody in this room, whether it's 100 people or tens of thousands of people, come and look at my thing. Like, I think that's something that has always been like particularly hard for me. Is as much as I love the arts, I hate showing my art because it's really scary for me.
mhm,
And doing this is actively like working against that part of myself.
mhm.
But it's a very necessary thing for us to do what we want to do. So like, of course I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. No questions asked, but that doesn't make it hard.
Right. Right. Oh, I like that. Just because it's not hard, you're not doing it, right? You're like, we're here. We're here to play ball. I love that. That's a really great. See, I love these insights. What else do you think has really led to the success of your launch? Drive is a big part of it. I'm glad to see that. Obviously, the two of you from the first start of your classes were really focused. You took every opportunity. You asked each other. You put yourselves out there. What were other things that kind of pair well with your drive? By the way, I love all these little personalities that we're seeing in the conversations.
I will add too, we are working on animating these. So they won't have like the action lines in the demo that like when it goes to, we're hoping to go to Steam Early Access like spring next year, but it just takes a hot minute for us to actually like get that out there.
Yeah, fair, fair. I love it.
But do you have something to add with Drive? Or it doesn't have to really.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you had said. I was like both reading this and listening to you.
Yeah.
But I think for sure going to shows, and even though it is hard to kind of put your art out there, I think that like when people do come up to you and they say that they like what they're seeing, they say that it's really funny, it's really cute, they really love it, that like really motivates me, especially to kind of keep working on this, to see more of like this kind of stuff in the world. And it's like, if you're not seeing it, like make it yourself.
That's so true. I think one of the awesome things about having our own game studio is sometimes we sit here and we're like, you know what I would love to see in a game? this. Or we're like talking about it, and we're like, it'd be really funny if ha ha ha, and then we're like, wait, it's our game. We can do
Did
that
I
if we
just give
want
myself something to do?
to. Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Like,
Awesome.
yeah. And like, for example, I don't know if we have heard this track in the game yet. You know, okay.
Yes.
They're all of the tracks. I think our sound designer does them in a computer program called Logic. With the exception of for the Three Chameleons, they have a track where like the instrument that they kind of use that kind of represents them is a kazoo, and you can't actually replicate that in a program. So that is the only track in the game that is like live performed by the three of us. Actually,
I keep it on my desk.
So,
Yeah, we all got
Live
together during
performance.
the pandemic to work on our game together for like a month. Because as awesome as it is to be able to remote work, I think like when we're inspired and creating,
Mhm.
there it's really different to just be able to bounce those things off and be like, flip your computer around and be like, look at this, like feel this, how does this work? And so, you know, of course, after being inside for a long time, we were like, let's get together and do this. And so, yeah, one of the things our sound designer planned for us was like getting these kazoos and being like, we're going to record this live. And so there was definitely a couple days where we were like learning this song on our kazoos. And
yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
that entirely started because we were like, how funny would it be if their like representative instrument was something silly like a kazoo?
yeah,
And then we were like, well, we can put that in. That's
Yes.
our decision.
Yes.
right.
Do we want this? Yes. The answer is always yes to kazoos. I'm learning very quickly here. I think that's amazing. I can't wait till we get to that part. If I'm not, even if not now, I'm ready in spring when we get to play the whole thing. Like I want that, and when I'm gonna hear it, I'm like, this was a live performance using real kazoos. It's one of those things when gamers know it. It adds just a little bit more of a special moment when you experience it.
Absolutely.
I love
We
that.
when we go to events, we play, you know, rather than playing Squirrely Roo's. This is how it started when we started going to events was we play Squirrely Roo's theme on loop for what 3 days.
Yeah.
And
You're like, I know
as
this
we
song.
added more songs to the game, we were like, we're just gonna play the soundtrack. So we're not like at the end of the conventions, we'd always have like our booth neighbors be like, yeah, that song is definitely stuck in my head for like a week after I leave these events. So we were like, all right, let's just start playing the whole soundtrack. And the kazoo song is one that plays, but like most of the people when we go to these events, they don't know that it's actually like us who did it. And the song will actually be in this part in the game
Mhm.
relatively soon. Like by the time we bring it to Steam Early Access, it'll be in this level, but we just like haven't put it in yet.
Fair.
But it will be here, and every time you face off against these chameleons, that's the song that's gonna play.
I cannot wait. I really wish I had known this ahead of time, or else I would have requested and said, can we get a live performance of the kazoos tonight? But I'm not going to put you on the spot. I feel like that's amazing. Like if I were a convention organizer, I'd be like, we need to have a live performance. Let's get them on stage with their kazoos. We're going to make it seem like a full orchestra, right? Like we'll put out the chairs, put a conductor in front of you who's just waving madly with no idea what to do, right? Like let's do this as a full thing.
We just actually wrapped up our first ever Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And we had it like we're getting people to like pre-register and stuff during our conventions over the summer because we do the most conventions over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we had talked about, we didn't actually end up doing it, but we talked about bringing our kazoos and then standing there and playing it. And it's hard to interact with people at your booth and watch the game and have them play it and then also stand there and be playing the kazoos. But we were like, we could probably get a lot of people to come over and like find out about our game if we did that.
Yes. That would be hilarious.
I don't know, maybe it's something that we're still going to have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just prep us and make sure someone's there recording for those of us who can't to attend the events up north where you all are at. Thank you.
I think like if one day we get to do another like orchestral performance like with an orchestra or something somewhere, we would love to actually include the kazoo piece because that wasn't written when we did that concert. But if we do it again, maybe we can do that.
Just add it into the list. I think that's amazing. Yeah. But I hear this and the kazoo story is hilarious, but it's reflective of so many things. And I want to call it out, right? Because there were a lot of elements behind that. One was keeping an eye out and figuring out what are people not doing, right? It's so easy to commentate like, here's what other people are. But I love that you pointed out, you're like, I see a gap. Here's what I need. And then you are like, we got to figure this out. Because the reason people aren't doing it is because either they don't care, they don't think about it, or they don't know how to do it. And so that means there's a knowledge gap there where you got to figure out, like, well, we got to figure out how to do this. I mean, fortunately, it's not too hard to figure out how to play a kazoo, but you still figure like we got to figure out how to put a game, the sound into the game. How are we going to work around it? And a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable or have fun enough, right? Like I'm going to put it that way. People sometimes aren't willing to be silly with it, and that can hurt creativity opportunities. And by being silly, you added fun into the game. You put a part of yourself and some vulnerability in there that is worth attaching to. And I love that. I do. Like if I had heard the kazoo song without it, I'd be like, this is funny. But now that I know how you all went through that process, it means something.
Right. And like, what's the point in having our own studio if we're not gonna have fun with it?
Yes.
And we're not gonna love it. I mean, of course, there's a lot of perks to doing it, but like having an indie studio is hard work, and there's a lot that we need to take on just to make sure that we like can exist. That maybe isn't like what we planned for way when we were like had this dream about making a studio.
Yeah.
But that's all worth it if we love every part of it, or at least love as every part of it that you can. Because I guess, does anybody really love doing taxes? I don't know that anymore.
No.
But we can throw in the kazoo thing and make the sound design part as much fun as we want it to be. Because obviously, like, if making sounds is your thing, I'm sure like you would already, I would hope, love it a lot. But if we can just like take this little thing and be extra silly with it. And I know like the tutorial level is like teaching you how to play, and so you don't actually get to see how color puzzles really come in. It's more of let's learn how to mix colors and then make sure that you can color match. Like make sure you can understand that a purple gate you might react with a purple fruit rather than an orange fruit or a green fruit. And so it's like a little bit more straightforward and maybe not as exciting. But then we can throw in like funny or silly dialogue and have like the characters just be having a good time and have the kazoo song, and then maybe that like learning process is a little bit more fun for everybody.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at this game. Tell us, where are we at in this story right now as we follow Squirrely Roo Rabbit? Is there a shorter version in which we address this character, or is it always Squirrely Roo Rabbit?
We always like refer to the game as Squirrely Roo Rabbit. Character-wise, Rabbit's like her last name, I would say.
Okay.
Like her first name is Squirrely Roo. I think in this early part, at least in earlier versions of the script, but I think we kept it at this point. Like you change things and you're like, I'm not sure what. Cammy asks Squirrely Roo if she can just call her Roo, because she's like, your name is like quite a mouthful for me. So can I just call you Roo? And so you're gonna go through the game and like she'll more like introduce herself as Squirrely Roo, but Cammy starts calling her Roo. There'll probably be other characters that hop on board with that later as she makes friends. One of the big themes of Squirrely Roo is friendship. She starts out in this forest where she's kind of by herself, and Cammy quite literally explodes her world when she crashes into her house, and that opens up a whole bunch of avenues with her as she goes on the journey and actually starts for the first time making friends, because she's always been by herself in this forest. And so we'll kind of see like that path of like, at what point is like a friend close enough that you're gonna like call them by a nickname? At what point do you call on them for help? What do you do when your friend needs help and things like that? And so we'll follow that journey with Squirrely Roo.
Oh, I like this. There's some layering in here, like how we make friends. There's the educational with colors, more along. Okay, so let's keep going. Yeah, so what are we seeing here? Points forward.
So do you want to
yeah, dive us in.
We have kind of like beaten up the chameleons who have like kind of intruded into like the Squirrely's house and yard, and they kind of accuse her of like stealing Cammy, and even though they're kind of the ones that destroyed her house.
Right.
It's kind of a big deal. Yeah, you stole my candy, but well, you blew up my house, so let's play this fair.
And like Ash was saying, like we're seeing this point where now Cammy is kind of asking Squirrely for help, even though they're kind of complete strangers. But like just with this interaction with the chameleons, she can't really do anything against them because
Right.
she's so small and she's one person.
They're kind of at the same point, but opposite points. Like Squirrely's never had friends, and she's making her first friend. Versus Cammie's just been outcasted from the chameleon group, and so she's had a community and has lost it. So now they're kind of ending up in the same point where like they don't really have anyone else to rely on, and so they come together to rely on each other, maybe in like a way that you wouldn't expect. Like, no, I won't go on a journey if a stranger knocks on my door tomorrow.
Yeah.
But maybe if my house blew up and I don't have anyone else to go to, and I might, and so yeah, I kind of like meet that point.
There's a lot of motivators for friendship out in the world.
Yeah.
I like it. So talk me through. We've got the hearts in the top left corner. We've got an acorn with 1 in the bottom right. We've got YXB in the top right corner. What do these mean? What do they indicate to us?
I guess with the hearts, those are kind of like just representative of her health.
Okay.
So she effectively has like 6 hits before she like respawns. And that is more something that comes up with when you're doing kind of like a fight sequence. Like with the chameleons, you run into them, they could hurt you, and then the health points would go down.
And like longer puzzles, I think of like games like Limbo, where they're like very solidly like a puzzle, like environmental puzzle games where you have like your entire puzzle is set on one screen, and because Squirrely Root's like a puzzle adventure game, you kind of have to move around to solve the puzzle, and so it's really easy like in a game where the entire puzzle's on one screen. If you die, they can fast reset you, and it's a very simple process. But in Squirrely Root, if the puzzle is taking place over like a quarter of the level, you don't really want her to die quickly, and which is why we, instead of doing the more traditional environmental puzzle thing, we actually give her multiple health points before you reset. And so like you could travel around, like you'll see in the first level, like in order to, there's like scaffolding puzzles and stuff that you have to like have to go down under something and then come back up, and there might be animals throwing fruit at you and being like, get out of here. But it's like kind of like, I don't know, Disney World themed is like the first level. But so there's a lot going on that could affect Squirrely Root's ability to solve the puzzle in one shot.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to be that hard. So we're going to have checkpoints that can restore your health and health fruits to do it. But we want Squirrely Root to be able to like solve the puzzle without you like dying and then having to start solving that thing all over again.
For sure. And I don't think there are any in this part of the level, but you use the fruit for color mixing, but then there's also a pink peach that's like kind of shaped like a heart.
Yeah.
And those restore your health. So they kind of like match that heart shape.
Right. It's the fruit that you would see in the title card of the game. When Squirrely is throwing a peach, you'll never actually have that experience of throwing a peach in the game, but because peaches are heart shaped, we were like, this is kind of like the perfect fruit to have like representative of the game, and then we're not like, I don't know, being like picking favorites between the colors that are in the game.
Sure.
So like the game runs in primary and secondary colors for puzzles. As you can see, the fruit on the bushes are all primary colors, so fruit naturally grows in primary colors in the world, but you might find baskets of secondary colors. It's never going to grow in them. And so Cammie, your chameleon friend, when she changes her own color, as if you want to grab some fruit, we can show this, she can change the color of the fruit, right? So when she's red, and this is, can you show the controller to the camera?
Oh, yes.
So your traditional Xbox controller, it's going to match these colors.
Right.
And so your blue button is your X button, and that's going to help you keep Cammie blue. And so we've color mapped that in the way, and that's also what this UI shows. Reminds you that X is blue, B is red, Y is yellow, but it's also a color wheel. And one thing that we realized, we didn't think about this setting off into making this game, is that maybe color mixing, color theory is not something that everybody knows as much as like we thought everybody knew. We were like, oh, you learned that in kindergarten, and then I guess everybody remembers that, but turns out if you don't go to art school, most people don't remember that.
Yeah.
There's this UI of a color wheel up here, and so you pick up a red fruit with your B button, it's red, because red plus red equals red. If you pick it up with your yellow button, red plus yellow equals orange, as you can see in the little wheels between it. There's a little orange. And that's really what that's for. We are going to add like an animation too, as you discover the fruit for the first time. The color wheel is going to be empty, but as you discover it each time, it's going to fill in, and that's our ideal way to have that progress throughout the tutorial, but it's not quite in yet.
No, that makes sense. And then you get to discover, like, oh, I made this color. I love feeling
Yeah.
like a god. Yes. I have discovered orange. No, I think this is fantastic. Scrib has a fun little commentary I want to throw here. Why has Squirrely Roo never had any friends? She's so friend shaped.
Is friend shaped. I feel like we don't really have like she lives in a forest by herself.
Mm,
She like canonically she lived there with her parents at one point.
hmm.
They're not there anymore, and we don't know that we want to go the route of her parents aren't here at all with us anymore.
Yeah.
But they are not with her anymore in the house that they had.
Hmm.
And so I mean, and that's really it, is that when she had them, she was satisfied and happy, like with the relationships that she had. She didn't go out and go anywhere else, but there's nobody close in this forest.
Mm.
um but with them not there anymore, Squirrely was pretty timid and she doesn't feel comfortable heading out on her own. So she spends her time, when you're in the house, you can see she's a painting, the
Hmm.
one that she has to tear through to escape her house. She spends her time making a lot of art, doing the gardening that you see in her garden and that sort of stuff. And being creative makes her really happy, but she does long to have friends, and that you find out as you go through her story.
I love that. Honestly, as an adult, I relate more to Squirrely Roo. Like, I moved to Orlando and I stay home and I play video games and I hang out with my stream. And I'm like, I don't want to go out and meet people. I don't know where to begin. You know?
Yeah.
The forest, the world of Orlando is a terrifying place. Right? Like, I don't want to go out. I don't know what I'm gonna encounter. Some may be friends, some may be monsters. I don't know. So I'm gonna stay inside my home, happy painting inside. You know, like, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Until something happens, where you're like, I need to go out. I need to have some friends here, right? Like, eh, it's a interesting point of like how easy it is for us to be comfortable and isolated. So I love this journey that Rue gets to make in finding more friends. Okay. So what does the acorn now mean in the bottom right?
Okay. Yeah, so as part of the experience of like Cammy crashing into her house, she has like this store of acorns nearby that kind of explode. They like go everywhere.
The squirrel in her loves
The
acorns.
squirrel in her loves acorns, right?
Yeah.
She's like collecting acorns to kind of store for, to eat later.
Mhm.
Um, and so as part of that, actually, I think we can even go to this dialogue. No, okay, I picked up the acorn, so it's not actually here. But part of their conversation is that Candy is like, I'm so sorry, like, did I do this? And Squirrely is like, well, it's not your fault, but then Candy still offers, like, as they're kind of Squirrely is helping her, that as they see more acorns, that they'll kind of collect them together throughout the story. So it's like a little bit about like a collecting.
Yeah.
That.
I like that.
Yeah.
We're kind of like throwing back to like I don't know, some of the games that we grew up with, where if you like have enough of a certain collectible, you'd be able to like unlock something cool. And so
Hmm.
we're gonna make it so that when at some point, if Squirrely Roo's house should be repaired, or you can access it from the main menu, there will be like a little gallery and that will be in Squirrely Roo's non-destroyed house model of like different things we can unlock to look at, like the background of the game, like concept art or
Oh,
characters that we ended up not including, and like a bunch of different things that we're just going to collect based on how many acorns you find.
okay. That's a cool idea. That is very neat. Well, and people like that. It's a way in which they still get more of not necessarily the story, but of the game, right? The more value and insight and to feel a part of it. I think that's a fantastic choice, but also not to make it story dependent because missing an acorn could be very stressful. Like, I can't
Right,
finish
right,
the story until I find all of them.
right.
I think that's a great choice. Well, you know what? We're at our hour break. So let's take a 5 minute break, a little bit of breather, bio, water, all that fun jazz. And then when we come back, let's continue to dive into this game, figure out further along in the story, and also talk about, the business side as you guys have been promoting this game, going to conventions, and having other people play it, and that process of you sharing all of this work, right? We've done so much internally to build it up and create it. We'll take it all externally in our second half. All right, friends, 5 minutes, put it on the timer. We'll be back shortly. Here we go. Hello, 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 friends. We are back here with the amazing friends from Boba Studios. We are playing Squirrely Roo Rabbit and having a blast. A blast. I almost said hell of a time, and then I thought blast, and then I just held out the A for a very long time. So I'm wonderfully awkward with my word choice here today. But either way, we're having fun. We're enjoying the artwork. We're enjoying the story and the cute little faces that we're seeing and the mixing of colors. Here we are in the demo as we go through it. Boba Studios, you all have worked so hard on this. And of course, Kickstarter in hand. What was it like saying, you know what, let's now bring this into the Kickstarter realm? Because that's a whole other level of creating tiers. What are we going to offer people? How are we going to encourage people to give us money for this project that we're developing? Because now it's no longer of the argument of like, do we want to do this? But like, let's get others to help support us in doing this. What is that
I
like?
feel like the Kickstarter goes back a little bit, probably to like 2018 and Upstart, I would say.
Probably, yeah.
We participated in a creative entrepreneurship pitch competition that was held by our alma mater, Maryland State College of Art. And that was like, you're allowed to participate in the year that you graduated or the year after. And so it was having us think about like, how can we keep our business off the ground and like float as we transition out of school? And this even goes back a little bit to that question that you had of like other skills that are not game development. And I would say like resiliency would be that one. We participated in this competition in the year that I was a senior, and we did Squirrely Roo the first time for thesis. We did the competition and we made it to the finals, but we did not win. But the year Krystin was a senior, we were like, there's no way we're not going to go back and do this again. You know, you did it once, you figure it out. We're going to keep moving. We're going to go back. And if we get it, we get it. If we don't, we tried.
Yeah.
And we actually won the second year. And that, you know, which is something that we would not have gotten if we hadn't done it again, which is why I say like next to drive, resiliency is probably the most important thing because you count yourself out first, right? Like if you decide to give up on something, you are the only one who can decide for you that you're not worth it, right? And like we could have been like, oh, we didn't get it, we're not going to get it, we're not going to convince anybody, but the only way that we could was getting back in there. And I should add too, like it really what we were struggling with was conveying why video games were important, like something people should care about. We sit in a weird space, so we make games and we're at an art school, and some people are like games aren't art, and some people are like art isn't a business, and some people are like,
wow,
women shouldn't be in either, you know? And it's like we sit in a really weird intersection.
This is some really nasty ideas across the board.
Yeah. And I think like that's why it's so important for us to not write ourselves out. So we were like, how do we figure it out? And we heard from several people that we were one of the last things that were cut. But the reason they couldn't get behind it was they were like, why would a video game, like, why should we give this money to a video game? And which is interesting because the competition is for, you know, creative mediums only. It comes from Micah. And so we decided that after we didn't get Upstart the first year, we'd participate in a different pitch competition that was just, it was Shore Hatchery at Purdue University, which is not creative. And we heard that again. We were one of the last people cut, and the same thing, the judges could not get behind funding a video game. And so it was like, whether it was the art side or the business side, like it was just, there's just questions around it. And actually the Carol Ratcliffe, the woman in charge of the foundation, came and found us after the second one and was like, I need you to know that it's not what you're doing, it's that they don't understand how that could be important. And so think about what it is that you can say to get somebody on board who doesn't do video games.
Ooh, that sounds like such a huge gap, right? Like, and for those of us in video games, are like, yeah, it's life changing. It's immersive art. We get to be a part of the story. You're driving where, you know, Squirrely Roo Rabbit gets to go on this end. Like that's, but and to hear people, especially maybe this day and age, like I could understand that argument maybe 30, 40 years ago. Like, what is this? But the
Yeah.
fact that video games now inspires movies and comics, like it's not the flip, it's
Right.
driving it. It feels so outdated that you have to make these
Hmm.
arguments.
Oh, for sure. But I think it's in the same way that we're still trying to make the argument today that art matters at all.
Mm,
And
mm,
so it's like if we can't even get the larger group of that art matters, how can you convince somebody that one of those arts matter? Especially when some people don't even consider that that thing is an art. And so I don't know, it's a really weird cycle, and it got us thinking like we need to start we need to focus not on the video game at all. Like the video game is the medium for us to do what we want to do as a studio, but how do we talk about that by leaving the game's part not out of it because it's how we're accomplishing it,
mhm.
but not at the forefront. And that was when we were like, well, the reason we want to make games and the reason that we know, but I guess we're not really telling people,
Yeah.
is that we want to see people like us making games. Um,
Mm.
and so that's how we approached it the second time in your senior year. We were like, Boba Studios matters because women being invited into spaces matter.
Mhm.
There should be women in games in the way that like every other art form also is having that struggle and has had that struggle historically. And so that is something very much understood in this community of like an art school, or just like an arts institution in general. And that I think actually spoke to the judges because that was the year that we won.
Mhm.
Um, and so we received funding, and that was in 2018. It was like really like our first amount of funding that we had, that it wasn't just us out of pocket like bootstrapping. We were like, what do we need this most for? And so we divided it in half into two sections, one of those being the obvious hardware and software. How do we recreate
Yeah.
the working conditions that we had at school? Because like one thing we should know, and I'm sorry I always use this as an example, it's like the perfect example is that like Krystin's computer literally could not handle the animation programs
Ah.
that she was using at Micah. You always used Micah computers for that.
Mhm.
And so we were like, all right, well we need the computers and then we need the software.
Yeah.
um,
Hello,
then the
price
other half
tags.
was like, exactly, yeah, huge price tags. um, was what happens when this money disappears? We have it now, but a subscription is what, 3 years? I
Yeah.
mean, what are we going to do then?
Yeah. Or
And
is
so
that
the
just now
second
a new
half,
deadline that surprises you? Like, we have to get it done in 3 years. You know?
right, and we didn't really want to put our future selves in that position.
No.
So we decided that the second half of the funding we were going to allocate towards merchandise.
Mm.
Because if we could start with having people buy things from our games, like all these conventions, like I grew up to going to them, you'd gone to like a bunch. Like how much of an appeal is the artist alley
Mhm.
when you go to a convention? You have something made unique by somebody who's like has so much love in their work, and they're local to you probably if they're at the event. And like I don't know, it's just like really awesome that you get to support them in that way. And we were like, well, what if we did something like that? Super
Yeah.
non-traditional for the video game
Yeah.
rooms, but I don't know. We love it. We love making art. It's
Yes.
another way to express ourselves that we don't get through making the game itself.
Mhm.
It's really cool to think of like what Squirrely Root could be in any
Yes.
form.
Yeah. But
So that's what we did.
well, it shows the creativity that you have to have around revenue, right? You're already a small team. You're working really hard. You're putting hours in, but there's tech that has to come in as well. There's other resources that have to be paid for. And at the end of the day, when you have a small budget, you have to think, how do I grow this budget? And what do I do to invest it to take some money and turn it into more money so we can grow? And
Right.
that takes risk. That takes creativity to say, on top of it, where can we diversify? And the benefit, of course, is that the two of you are very interdisciplinary. You have so many other skills that you can draw upon to say, yeah, let's play up the artist alley. That's one of the most walked areas of any convention that people love to wander through and see the different work. And people will buy things even if they haven't played the game yet, right? So, like, the game isn't, they can't play it. All they do is the demo at this point, of course. But if they see something and it looks cute, right? It's friend shape, right? They're like, I need
Right.
friend, I buy friend. That's
Right.
one of the easiest options. So I think that's smart. And I think it's also something that not just indie studios, but the gaming industry as a whole continues to grapple with of like, how do we bring money into a game? Like even Fortnite, right? Like Fortnite, the free game, still has to offer skins or, 100 Thieves, the esports team does a lot on the merch side as well to say like,
Yeah.
how do we continue to provide and offer value to our brand and help us think beyond just, well, we only do one particular game in the video game space. Mm, I love
And
that.
so, like for us, our merch 100% funds the development of our game too. And that is, unless we're putting in our money, which I mean, of course we do, because
Yeah.
as starting out, like the merch isn't enough yet. Like, unless we're putting in our own money, and we like our merch is all that we have
Yeah.
to do that. But that's why it's so vital to us existing. And convincing somebody to come up, if they want to play the game and they really like it, then they might buy something. But like you said, they don't even necessarily have to like it if they like plushies, if they like enamel pins,
Hmm.
and that lets us exist. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is for us. It's like we want to make video games and we want to be able to eat and have a house and or like shelter, you know.
With the goal, of course, of only making video
Right,
games.
exactly.
Maybe get a boba every
And like
now and
that's
then too. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You want to eat and sleep and be able to, afford to where you need to be able to live,
Yeah.
it's reasonable requests.
Yeah.
But this is
That's
such
how we got on
important.
Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about the Kickstarter. What was it like to go through the process of having to, because you've done, of course, some of these pitches, the competitions. What was it like to say, I've got to take this all and now put it in a website, into a form that Kickstarter has created with the tiers that they do, the pages and the breakout, and of course, the very unique audience that is the type of individuals who scroll through Kickstarter to say, who can I fund today? Which we love those individuals. Thank you for doing that. Yes.
Do you want to start with Kickstarter?
Sure. I know one big reason we wanted to run a Kickstarter this year was we actually sold out of our plushies. The first round of plushies, we had bought them with the Upstart grant that we got, and then by the time they came in, it was early 2019. Um, so we had them, and we were not able to bring them to conventions for another 2 years. By like 2020.
Early 2020.
Yeah.
Early 2020 was when we could actually start selling them.
Yeah.
But within that first year of selling them, we actually sold out completely. And then, in a post-COVID world, we didn't anticipate the manufacturing costs and shipping costs to go up as dramatically as they did.
Yeah.
So we weren't actually able to buy them out again. And so that's what like kind of led to us wanting to do this Kickstarter now, was to buy more of these plushies. They're our most popular item, and everybody like loves them. And the ones we've been taking now, just to kind of let people know about the Kickstarter, like even then are like, can I just buy this one though?
Right.
We're like, no, wait, we have to wait on that.
We still need some to photograph so we can actually have images on our Kickstarter.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. And just like the fact that like you don't know what you don't know about running a business. Like, of course, we see that grocery prices and stuff are going up. It just never occurred to us that when we sold 6 Swirly Roots total pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and so we got in a batch of 150. So those other 144 we'd already priced pre-pandemic, and it just didn't occur to us as like, I mean, now we know that when we priced it, that it would be wrong, and that when we were so excited about get back out there and like show them, but it was a misstep on our part, and it didn't occur to us that we should be like checking all of our merchandise, and now that we're allowed back into shows, like, can we buy this again? And we went to go reorder them. Like you said, we sold out in a year, and when we hit that last 1/3, we got online to go and order them because they take about 6 months to come in, and we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But we knew we wanted to learn how to do Kickstarter because we want to be able to fund physical copies when our game comes out, and so we intend to, at the end of Squirrely Root's development cycle, to like fund or to like do crowdfunding for physical copies, for porting ultimate goal is the Nintendo Switch, and so we would fully love to be there. But cross-platform as possible, we're so open to, and so having all of those dev kits and like being able to have funding for them is something that we're hoping to raise. And so if we do a Kickstarter now, we're not going to be like risking it all at once and like trying to figure it out, because Kickstarter is hard. Like you feel like you like learned something and then you just
to it than we had thought going in. Like we had, had this plan like, oh, it'll take like, let's plan out like a month to, kind of figure out everything that we needed to do before it launched and get everything ready. And it was definitely not enough time.
No, whatever.
That's always one of those hard things. Like when you go through it, how many variables keep changing. And in business, it's not just like, I made a decision and we're done. It's like, oh, I have to keep staying on top of things. I have to keep updating and being aware. I now have to keep tabs on everything from, okay, here's shipping costs, here's resource product costs that go up. Here's, marketing has now increased across the board. And like now it's everything. And then on top of it, also figuring out like social media trends as you try to market it and tell your game and how do I crop and create assets for that. And then also still making the game on top of it. I mean, the benefit is like you get to make all these decisions, but the downside is you get to make all the decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like one thing too we kept hearing at the holiday season, like last holiday season, was that we were doing most of our conventions take place from in the summer. All of them take place pretty much from spring to fall. So then fall to winter, we majorly do just art markets where we sell our merch and then kind of, raise money for our game for the next year when everything shuts down and like there's no conventions or holiday markets and it's just the holidays. Mm-hmm. Of course, you take your time to do the holidays, but then there's also a few months around that where nothing's happening. And so if we have that funding, we can allocate that to like a big push of game dev at the start of the year. And one of the things that we kept hearing were people being like, when are you going to have new merchandise? Like, I want new stickers. I want new enamel pins. And so that was perfect for the Kickstarter rewards, is that we introduced 3 new enamel pins this year. Over the course of this year, we also introduced, I think, 12 new stickers, because we had 3 up until this point. But then when we had to do the Kickstarter, we were like, well, that's another reason to do it. We'll have exclusive Kickstarter only enamel pins and stickers. Mm-hmm. And that will again be filling like a need that our community has asked us for. And hopefully that will be like enough to bring people in to fund us getting both the Squirrely-roos back, but also Cami. So for the first time ever, we were working on making a Cami plush that would actually fit in Squirrely-roos pouch, just like in the game, because it was something that we had planned on when we first made Squirrely-roo. Like, we truly believed that Squirrely-roo and Cami are better together, but
yes,
it cost a lot of money to start a plushie and make a plushie, and we didn't know how popular they were going to be. We couldn't have anticipated that they were going to be as popular as they have been for us, which is absolutely incredible. So we held off on Cami at the beginning.
I'll be honest, like, where do you even begin with that? Because I feel like I'd be Googling, like, how to make a plushie, right? Like, I just like, where do you even begin to be like, I need to source these things. I need to find somebody who's going to make enamels and make it of good quality at a reasonable price. Like, where do you begin that process to find suppliers, right? Or because we already know, like, even on top of it, find suppliers or find your sound technician or find another teammate. Like, where does someone go to find all that an indie developer needs?
We are both in a very like lucky, also very weird position. Like our sound person, TJ, we met in school. It was another case of we did projects together. Mm-hmm. And so like that's incredible. You know somebody and you want to keep working with them. I mean, that's huge. But we're also in this weird position where we're artists, and so our first reaction to do we want to make something is, well, I have sewing skills. Do we want to hand make all of our plushies? The answer is no. Yeah. The answer is if we ever want to work on our video game ever again, no, we are not going to hand make all of them.
Yeah, fair.
But I think that's a conversation we have with ourselves frequently where we're like, we're making stickers now. What if we just got a printer and then did all of the stickering ourselves and then cut them all out? And I was like, well, again, do we ever want to work on the video game? We could, but we've had that conversation about making buttons too.
Yeah.
Because we make buttons. It's like, we could also get a button maker and do all of this ourselves. You know,
Yes.
it continues.
Yeah.
But
And to
I
save
think
some dollars, right? Because that's the argument. Like, I could make it. Do we want to
right.
make, like, there's a reason when you went into the video games instead of like, we're going the shirt making process, right? Like, that's something different on that end. And now you're just
We're
constantly only
shirts
making
too,
buttons. Yeah.
though.
So
Yeah, I
where did
think
you find
so.
a plushie maker, right?
Lots of research.
A lot of
Oh,
research, yeah.
And it helps too that when we're in the artist alley, we have a lot of artist alley friends. We have a lot of friends we went to school with who do artist alley things. We can ask people.
mm,
Um,
that's a good thing.
but actually, our plushie manufacturer was somebody that we found on our own. Because we were like, we didn't know where to start either. We were just Googling companies, and we found this amazing little company called Budsies,
Yeah.
who specializes in two things. One, turning children's drawings, doing one-offs into plushies, and
Oh,
two, turning pet photos into plushies. And we're like, our needs are kind of that. Like, no, it's not
yeah,
a children's drawing, but it is a drawing of an animal.
yeah, yeah.
And kind of the perfect sweet spot. So they have a bulk supplier. And so I don't even know like how we actually found their name. I just know we've researched for a really, really long time.
Mhm.
You know, unlike the t-shirts, where we went, I was like, I want to make sublimation dyed t-shirts. It's a very niche,
I
like
know what I'm
dye
already looking
process.
for.
I want this, and that's what I want. And we Googled that, and that it takes so long because there's only so many people who do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the plushies is like there's, I guess, only so many. Like there aren't as many plushie manufacturers as you would think, but or like who do custom plushies. But at the same time, they're like, I don't know. There's a lot of stipulations like where your plushies can only be like a certain size, or they didn't. They're like very like flat looking, and
Yeah.
I don't know. We just spent a lot of time researching. Really.
And I love that. And I appreciate your honesty on it, right? Because so much of it feels like, oh, and they got all this done. And people just like, it just happened. Like we made it happen and we figured it out. But it's the time. It's the
Yeah.
time, it's the effort. Like just choosing and making these decisions, it's a lot because, again, like there's no booklet of like, here's how you make an indie game, right? There's no booklet of like,
Right.
here's how you make a plushie and customize it or choose all of
Right.
your merch. It's a lot of process of doing research and knowing who you are, what you want. Like when it came to shirts, you knew exactly what you were looking for. But that made it easier because if you didn't know anything, you'd have to start researching what about shirts? What are different qualities? What are
Right.
different cuts that people like? What are designs, right? It's a lot more on that end. And a lot of people, I think that's one of the other hindrances in seeing the big jump of making the dream versus the reality is being willing to put in all the extra work, right? When it's not an easy answer out there, when there's not like a YouTube tutorial that gives you a step by step that says, you know what, you're just gonna have to spend time and figure it out, right? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time just testing and figuring out what you like.
Right.
Wow.
And we've been very fortunate, I think, and we love all of the manufacturers that we've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
We've definitely heard stories from like some other artists, but I think one thing that's been like a point of like I kind of want to say it's a point of luck. It probably isn't. Is that where like as a team of artists, we are very much we care very much about the process, and we care about how like we had them send us a swirly Roo plushie like months in advance, so we could even like squeeze her and be like, this doesn't feel right, these arms don't feel like how floppy we want them to, and her body isn't as full as and it's just I don't know, we're picky, I guess.
Particular,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're particular. That's
Well,
a
they
great way to
represent your
word that.
brand, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we've reached out to these manufacturers and we've sent like a paragraph long message or email or whatever and explain, we want to be a part of the process, these are the things that we're looking for and all of that, I think only manufacturers who are going to be understanding and up to that task, reach back out to us.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's, been amazing with how we've had success with everybody. But honestly, I think it's like another one of those things where we kind of look at ourselves and we really can't be anyone other than who we are.
Yes.
And if you like meld with that, you will or you won't. And so I think like we've been very fortunate with how we've gotten to work with the suppliers who have, because they love talking back to us and working with us through all of the details and sending the pictures and sending like physical proofs in the mail. And so we've had really wonderful relationships come from that. And I think that we take that approach in showing our games at events too. It's that we can never be anyone other than who we are, and
Yeah.
you want us in your space or you don't. So we might as well show up and be unabashedly ourselves, because then that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
our game is gonna be cutesy and it's gonna be pink and pastel and I don't know. That's kind of like the approach that we take, is really just like we can be ourselves, and then we will find our people through that.
I like that. That's a really good take. So let's talk about putting yourselves out there, right? Cons, conventions, right? This is your chance to find the masses and introduce, little squirrely rabbit or squirrely roo rabbit. Now I'm definitely mixing things up. It's been fun. Okay. Right? To introduce them to the character, to the game, to you all, the kazoos, right? Bringing all of this together. I want to hear from you, right? As people, myself, plenty of viewers in here, those who will be listening later in the podcast, right? As they listen to this and they're learning about, of course, indie games, your particular game, what are do's and don'ts that you like or don't like when people come up and ask about your game? Because we see this all the time, right? There's plenty of people that come up. Interactions are certainly all there. What are ones that are like, these are great, I want more people like this to come up to my table, and that was not fun, I wish they hadn't done that, right? Like what
Yeah.
can guide us to say what makes for a good chance for us to learn more about indie games that we see at conventions?
I feel like a good approach always is to like kind of ask as many questions as you can, and like generally too, the more specific that you can get, the like more information that like as the question asker you'll get a better answer from that.
Right.
So like I'm trying to think of
What
an
can I
example.
do to support you?
Right, yeah, things like that.
Yeah. Right. Like you could come up and ask us like a close-ended answer, and we can say yes or no to that thing, but that doesn't necessarily like provide the most information. But if you're like, how can I support you, it's like, well, if getting from our shop doesn't work for you, if you don't have like an email inbox, or your email inbox is too full, you don't need to subscribe to our newsletter, but we are on like a lot of social media. If you're a streamer, you can do that. There are like so many different answers of what you can do with indie games, that asking open-ended questions is perfect. In the same way too with playtesters, for sure. Yeah. Like I think a lot of people might not realize, but when playtesters come up to us and are like, I have this idea, like I saw this bug in your game and this is how you should fix it. They might not know all of the things that we've thought about why that fix might not be the best for it.
Yeah.
And maybe it might be, but I think that when it's generally
Broaching it as a
speaking,
question
like,
first.
right, wording as a question, because like you might not know everything about what goes into that project, and it's really helpful for us when you tell us the bugs that you find, what's broken, and like things like that, and so we can recreate it and kind of figure it out and see like what happened, or watch you do it. But we will work through the solution to find which one's best, because like there are a lot of people that we are working to make this game for, and we have a lot of specifics in our engine, a lot of systems that come together, and so I think it's easier when we can solve the problem if we know what the problem is and what we're working toward, rather than just like an idea.
I think that's a really good take. Yeah, it makes me think of all the different Reddit threads that I drop into for any game. Like, oh, they should just do this. If only they fix this, it would be great. Why aren't they listening to what we're saying on social media? And it's like, no, they hear you, but they have more context, right? To understand of like, well, there's other priorities that we're taking care of first, or because once we fix those, that may solve that inadvertently behind it, or you know what, maybe there's a more complicated approach, because if we do that, it will have repercussions elsewhere. We can't just change the one little thing, right? There's so much more on end. And so people coming in with solutions isn't the right take, but you're right to say like, hey, I noticed this, and flagging is such a great help.
Yeah. I think one thing we got several times early on not at our conventions, but generally speaking, like at a lot of, I think, business events, because we spend a lot of time going to a lot of business events, especially early on, to try to like legitimize ourselves as like a business in the Baltimore space.
Yeah.
And I think that was like something that like some people just didn't understand. But a few times we heard like well, why isn't this a mobile game? Haven't you heard video games are dead? We all have phones now. And
Well,
Squirrely Room wouldn't work as a mobile game.
yeah.
We're in a 2.5D perspective. It's neither 3D, it's neither 2D. And like if you walk back and forth, you can see it's a little bit, it takes getting used to.
Yes.
How to line yourself up with that rock specifically so it's on a specific line. It's very finicky.
Yeah.
And it's something that we've worked toward making it like feel good and are like, actively working towards too. But a mobile game is a game that you can play on the go, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't make Farmville or Pokemon Go or whatever and tell people they can only play in a specific situation.
Yeah.
You can't only play Candy Crush when you're like sitting still. And Squirrely Root, because of its perspective, is a game that like if you're on a bus and you're just like slightly like vibrating up and down, or in a car, or anywhere other than sitting in the doctor's office and waiting for your name to be called,
Yeah.
it probably is going to become frustrating because you have to be able to be precise.
Yes.
And we try to do enough heavy lifting to make it feel like you don't have to actually be as precise as the computer needs you to be. But that's stuff that we work on in the back end of design to making that feel better. But I think like we could sit here and go like, yeah, so many people have said this to us. Let's make Squirrely Root a mobile game. But that effort isn't going to be worth it if people are like, actually, this sucks to play on mobile.
It's not going to be a good experience for them, right? Like, and there's plenty. I mean, heck, there's even like AAA games are like, we're only first releasing to this console and it'll be 2 years later when it's on PC, right? Like, it's fine to set like, this is what we're capable of doing. This is where we think the right audience is going to be. And this is going to be the best experience for it.
Right.
I feel like that's so abrupt. Like that's telling artists like, no, you can't be on that kind of canvas. You need to make sure you're using this paper instead. Like that's such a bold take. Like,
for real.
I mean, I might critique it a little if you're like, let's do this on Atari. Be like, well, a lot of people don't have Ataris anymore. But you're not exactly recognizing like this is an outdated mode, right? I still use my Xbox controller for everything.
Yeah. I'm like, there are new consoles coming out like currently that people are waiting on. We're good.
Yes. Okay, so talk me through, we've been wrapping up the demo here at this point, right? Which is a nice short thing. People can play it, right? Super fun and adorable. But we're going to hop into the level 1 and get a little back preview now at this point, right?
Yeah. So normally this is where you could either stop playing or go to the test level, as you can see kind of on the bottom. We'll go to the test level, which is very gray boxed.
Yeah, this is level 1, so it's our next level coming out. It is the level that we are waiting on to be completed before we go to Steam Early Access.
Okay.
And just like the demo that we had here today, it is going to end up on our website available to play for free to first get like the experience of Squirrely Root Rabbit. But as Krystin said, this is very much gray boxed.
Well, let's break that down for terms. What does gray box mean for the non-developers?
Yeah, gray box just kind of refers to like the very first iteration of the level design. So you like literally will throw in just like the default box. I mean, these have been like textured.
Yeah. Right.
But normally you would like leave it as like the very like plain basic gray box. Just to kind of see if it feels like a good amount of space to run around in. Maybe this is too big. It's maybe the path at the beginning feels too long.
Right. Can Squirrely Root actually jump up this thing that she's supposed to?
The ledge is too high.
Yeah, it's too high.
Right. We've gone a little further, like you said, and we've gone ahead and textured the boxes now that we've been working on it to help us, like, okay, well, dirt gets a different sound for her footstep than wood does. And so, like, texturing this helps us move on to the later stages of it. But,
and it helps, too, with, like, when you can kind of size everything, that then later when the art assets are being made, 3D models and the 2D assets, then we know already how big to make them.
Right.
And as part of, like, having this test level, there's an even like a different test level as well, where we just have boxes that are like pre-scaled to her jump height. So like these pink ones are like exactly as high as she can jump, and so then we like already kind of know we can copy and paste that pretty easily to just
And one important thing, if you go back to the pink ones, that you can note from looking at this level is actually these pink indicate that there is a mechanic here that we are skipping.
Right.
So this pig, when you feed the pigs, their mechanic is that they become bouncy. So they'll fall asleep and you'll jump on their tummies to reach new heights. And so that's actually what these pink boxes are standing in for us, is so we can get up here without having turned on the pig's mechanic, which, as Krystin said, are actually being done in the other test level, which is effectively like almost arena shaped, where we're putting in like new puzzle mechanics, like we're testing the scaffolding to see if it breaks correctly. We put in the pigs and the squirrels and making sure they're throwing and bouncy and all of the things that they're supposed to do before we actually put them in this major level, because you don't really want to put a pig like in a large level and then have to run across that whole level just to make sure that they work right. So we're testing that in a few different places.
Yeah, and in like the most technical way too, in that other like arena level where we are working out the mechanics rather than the space.
Yeah.
We can take, once it's done, we can take that and turn it into a prefab, which is just kind of like a word that describes an asset that you kind of like, it like links back to that one asset.
It's like a cookie cutter.
Yeah, like a cookie cutter, exactly. And
Yeah.
you can drag that prefab in and it just copies and pastes it exactly as it is.
Right. So like if I have a Squirrely Roo cookie cutter, right, I only make the initial one once, and every Squirrely Roo cookie will appear exactly like the first one because I've made that mold. And that's the same thing. It's every Squirrely Roo prefab loads into the level. So they're all technically different assets, but they are all set up to have the same exact system, so they will operate in the same way.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then for efficiency too, like these, as it's connected to this like cookie cutter, like if we change them at all, it will kind of do it across the board.
Right.
So say, tomorrow I want to make Squirrely Root orange. I can just change the prefab and then they all update at the same time.
Right.
Oh, whatever.
So it's very, very effective.
Yeah, and so it might even be helpful to a degree to think of it as, I guess, not Squirrely Roo, even though I know I picked that example, but I'm thinking like with the pigs, right? Because there's one Squirrely Roo per level.
Yeah.
But what if we have 50 pigs in one level?
Oh.
I don't want to set up each of their systems individually. It's easier to sit here and be like, okay, we don't need a Squirrely Roo prefab because I guess we could set it up 12 times, right? Nobody wants to set up one pig 50 times.
You're like, I hate this pig.
Pigs are bad. Yeah.
Right, and it's so much easier to just update the one,
Yes.
and then it just automatically updates.
And then they can have unique variations in them, and that's how you can see the pigs. Well, I guess it doesn't show that in this level. Not all the pigs are going to be blue.
Yep.
And that will be a variation on the prefab, is that you can set all of the pigs to have the same mechanics, and if we update it, it'll go to all of them, including the ones that we have told, okay, well, now you're using the green sprite, and you're going to use the purple sprite.
Yeah.
And so it'll change everything else, but it'll let us keep those variations.
Okay.
For that each item is that too.
I can't wait to see all the different colored pigs, but I do agree with Scrib. Keep Squirrely Roo exactly the way she is. She's perfect. She really is precious, and I like the movement. I see where we have all these iterations of her, of like how she moves, how her ears flop, how she looks when she turns around, right? And all of this, it feels fluid, and it's fascinating to see this stage of the game, right? Where we're just seeing like, what are the pathways? What does it look like? How's it feel to jump? Am I jumping too much and now I need to run for a while,
One thing too that I think we don't get to talk about often, but it was a huge discussion when we were designing Squirrely Roo, is can you do the 3 fruit colors?
Yes.
If you look at them, they all have slightly different animations, and so it's that Squirrely Roo has a different silhouette. That, of course, the color changes, and that helps you, but she has a slightly different silhouette for each of the different poses. That is just like another one of those things that reinforces to your eye that it's different and which one it is, that you can kind of help you tell, like, am I clicking the right color without even like thinking, am I clicking the right color?
Yes.
I'm
dense,
and like that
so
was
I love
very
that.
to us. Yeah.
For dumb gamers like myself, it's great to have multiple cues to say this is the right thing, because we will miss something.
Right.
Like if you had I would have oh yeah, the colors are different because I'm looking at the poses instead. People pay attention to different things.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
And that's what makes sound so important.
Yeah.
And the fact that like Squirrely Roo's silhouette, like if you can explain like why that was important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with Squirrely Roo's silhouette, one of the things that's really important about character design is kind of always making sure there's a clear silhouette, so you can kind of like know, like without even like looking too closely, like what you're seeing already. Which is where, you know, like her big bushy tail comes in. It's like, you know, it's just like unmistakably her.
Right. When everything's moving on screen, we're never going to get confused another animal with Squirrely Roo.
Yes.
Right.
It makes me think of Pokemon's like, yes, that Pokemon is the silhouette, and like it should be immediately recognizable, because the moment you think that silhouette is something else, it's just like you don't have that same connection.
Right, for sure. And why when they have like Pokemon like Voltorb and Electrode, it's like when it's harder to tell them apart, they might become like less memorable to you in your brain, have less of an ability to maybe merchandise.
Yes.
You know, them.
For sure.
I think one of the characters we looked at was like Jack and Daxter, because it was the duo of them. And how is it that when you can always look at them as their silhouette together, right? Like, which one's Jack? Which one's the person?
I think
Jack is a person. Daxter is never overlapping on Jack, right? Like, you always have Daxter like on the shoulder. So if you made them like black and white, like just a silhouette, you would always be able to tell it's both of them. And that was something that we wanted to look at with Cammy. It's a little bit more challenging for us because we wanted Cammy to ride in her pouch. But it's like, how could we make it so when Squirrely Roo's a silhouette that you could always tell if she was solo or with Cammy? So that they're reading as like two characters in a dynamic duo together rather than just one.
For sure, yeah.
There's a lot of visual cues that you have to provide. Sorry, Krystin, go ahead. Don't let me cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just gonna say, like, that's where like kind of using the combination of silhouette and color can be important, because, you know, you like I always try to start with the silhouette because, you know, it's like more of a fundamental, and then you kind of build from that, like where Cammy's color is like unique to Squirrely Roo, like they're very distinct, different, but then she's like different from the other parts of the world too. You know, if you see Cammy, especially because she's so small, sitting in the world, she will pop out.
Right, and that's one of the things. Our color palette was something we thought about a lot, and actually why there is so much pink is that if you see pink like naturally, like in small doses, but like, you know, bunnies are generally speaking neutral colors, right? And so a color, like the color that you see most prevalent on bunnies that's not a neutral is the pink. And so we already know that pink looks good with Squirrely Roo because of that. And so we'll know that Cammy is going to look good with Squirrely Roo because of that. But in the natural environment, we're going to see a lot of greens, a lot of blues, a lot of beiges. And so having bright pink Cammy with that, she's going to stand out.
For sure. And then with the color mechanic too, we didn't want to have that kind of bias toward one color or another. So we had to avoid basically like red, yellow, orange, green, blue, and purple. So then what's is like pink, you know, black and white.
And that's part of why Squirrely Roo is to be a neutral.
Right, and so she ends up kind of being a neutral color anyway.
Right. Please explain to me these giant critters we're seeing in the background now too. What are those?
Sure. So part of this level, we're kind of seeing like the first animal that's introduced are pigs, and then this is kind of like, you know, where they live. This is their culture we're seeing, and they're kind of like in the middle of building sort of like an amusement park, like a Disneyland almost-esque area.
Except for also very spa heavy because like
I don't think they have a good direction. Their amusement park. That's part of their problem. Is they're like building this out, and they are like, why is no one coming to our amusement park? We're losing so much money. And
the king of pigs, the big oink, is a little cocky. And so one of the things that he's like, our amusement park should convey who we pigs are to everybody else, because like it should tell our history. So because we're important and we want other people to know that too, and they should learn about us here. And it should also be profitable, so that we can like survive. And so he does that by like decorating the amusement park with art of himself that he's commissioned, and then also making rides based on like both his likeness and also his like desires for activities. Like it's very spa focused because he likes to lounge around. and be comfortable, which is great. But then you also end up in the situation where the giant water fountain is literally a statue of him that you're bathing in.
Appropriate. I really hope that one day this becomes so big we get our own little park around this with a pig spa and amusement. This sounds delightful. I would like to visit. Thank you.
That would be awesome. We've talked about if we ever decide to make robes that we'd want them to be Big Oink themed.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Yes, yes. Okay. Very clever. Again, thinking all along the way how it can continue to build out and exist outside the game. I think this is fascinating. We are almost out of time, which is killing me because I love this little world, and it's been. I appreciate you showing this level, this test level, because this is something most people, unless they get to go to a con and get to talk to wonderful individuals like yourself, they will never get to see. We only, for the most part, get to see the final product, or maybe sometimes if we accidentally run into some glitches, right? Other than that, these kind of elements, unless we're purposely seeking out, are just a mystery on how the game is created. So I love that you're unraveling the story for us, that you're giving us ways to get insight. I'm going to end with a final question. How can we support you? As we are so excited, all that you shared with us about Boba Studios, it's thrilling. I can't wait to see our amazing Squirrely Roo Rabbit go on grand adventures, help out our Cammy, which I can't wait to see the plush for Cammy, our chameleon that will be tucked in. The more stickers that you're offering, the enamels, one day, those oink robes will be fantastic and on our bathroom to do must-haves, right? But how do we, at this point, right now, what are the variety of ways that we can cheer on Boba Studios and the vision that you all creating?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the great things, ways to like support us would be, I think the first step would be maybe going onto our website, which we are currently working on making a hub for all of these things. We actually finished redesigning our website during Kickstarter, and we're having trouble getting the domain to reroute to it. So currently, if you go on, it will be our Tumblr site. But one day, hopefully this week, Kickstarter ended up being so busy that we kind of had to ignore this problem and come back to it. So hopefully this week we'll have it reroute to the correct place, and it'll be this website that we are so proud of and so excited to share. We started drawing it out in 2019, and it just kept getting on the back burner. And now its first iteration is done, and we have plans for more pages. But you can go on and you can find out about our games and other games that we've made. Squirrely is our first title that we're going to release, but we have done more projects as a team. You'll be able to get to our Etsy shop from there, which is where we have all of our merchandise that supports our game. And we do have a lot of things that we actually have made in the past year that we haven't put up on Etsy, including Christmas ornaments that we'll hand make personally. And so one day, hopefully, this holiday season, they'll be online. Because so far we've just kind of been making them for art markets. But if you are also local to us in Baltimore or local to one of our shows and you want to place an order, just DM us and we will cut out the shipping and set up a pickup with you. And that's another thing with events. There will be a calendar on our website so you can find where we are. Pre-pandemic, we were going to about 45 to 50 shows a year. It is less now. There are less shows. We're also trying to be a little bit more like, if these shows should meet certain criteria, like, are we getting enough people in our newsletter? Are there people who would come back to the game and buy it? Are they investing in the development through our shop? And if they're not one of those things, we try not to continue going long term, but that wasn't really something we were doing at the start. We were just trying to get our name out there. But I think we're still doing a lot of shows. We have 2 coming up over the next 2 weekends, but that'll be an event calendar on our website. There will also be a link to all of our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Tumblr, as I said. Yeah.
Why not? Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. And so we have that. We have a Discord, and if you want to come in, we're always in our Discord. So if you want to come in and chat with us, we are always happy to chat with you about like the game, your favorite event that you've been to. Like, we just love getting to know our players, and that matters a whole lot to us. And so that's another great place to be. And I think that's it. Oh, our newsletter. We do monthly newsletters about our game. Every other month we try to switch it up. So every other month we try to touch on development, and then every other month we try to do like design or development theory, like what we, for Women's History Month the past few years, we've talked about different things we've experienced, or we've done like how do you set up a booth at a convention, or um, the ones that are more development focused on our game might talk about like these are the updates that we made, or how did we record the waterfall sounds, how did we do the like aesthetic redesign of level 1 to make it different than the tutorials aesthetic was one that we did, which is awesome. Because I feel like you might not necessarily see them in different ways, but we end up making level 1 like at daybreak, and so it's got like a slightly cooler palette that's like not as, I don't know, just standard day light that you might see kind of in the tutorial. And I think those are the biggest ways that I can think of.
I'm excited. I mean, we're waiting. I already went to Boba Studios, of course.com, signed up for the newsletter on there, getting ready to join the Discord. Keep an eye on your merch that's on your Etsy shop, right? All the cool things that are coming there. I think there's just so many ways, and I love that you've been so considerate to make sure that it's easy for everyone to find you, right? You're not hiding your story. You're putting it out there, talking about what you do, sharing your passion. And y'all, if you are looking for that point of inspiration, to remember to be, right, who you want to be, to chase those dreams and make those a reality, Boba Studio is the account that you want to make sure that you're following. You want to see and surround yourself by individuals who are pushing themselves, that are driving themselves, because that kind of determination, it can be exhausting to hold on your own, right? Don't be alone in the forest anymore. Recognize those around you who are inspiring, that are pushing themselves, and put yourself in a place to be able to pull from all of that energy, pull from all of that inspiration, pull from all of that knowledge base that we have here, and that you are not alone. That's why we love the gaming space that we have here. That's why we love tools like being here at the Gamers, or on the Gamers app, or on Discord, where we can join Boba Studios and talk with you all at all times and random hours of the day, But that's part of it. Take advantage of these, get to know people, get to know their stories, and it's going to be so much richer. I want to thank the two of you so much for coming in and sharing all of this that you all have done. It's so much, and I'm impressed with every step of the way, the effort, the research, the thoughtfulness of what you're bringing to the table for not only yourselves at Boba Studios, but for other indie developers, for other games on the platform, for legitimizing and continuing to make the arguments that video game is an art form, right? I feel like we could have gone so much more into a tangent on that end outside of it, but there's so much, and I want to thank you all for coming and being so open with us. Any final thoughts before we close out today?
We're so excited to be here today. I'm so glad that we were able to get connected with you and be able to chat with everyone. And as you said too, like we are everywhere and we want to be, accessible to people. So like if you have a question about our game, or you have a question about indie games, or how to go to a show or whatever, like feel free to just drop us a line, because we always try to be like accessible and happy to chat. We have like lots of different experiences that we can share. So yeah, if we want to be not just like another, an indie dev team chasing our dream, we also want to be like a resource and part of the indie dev community that like we're building together as indie devs.
I love it. Any final thoughts, Krystin? I don't want to cut you off either. Your moment to
No,
shine.
I feel like that kind of wrapped it up. I thought it was a lot of fun to show off this test level. We don't do that very often, besides out at shows.
I don't think we've ever done it
on the stream. Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun to kind of talk about the process. I always love to do that.
I love it. Thank you so much for entertaining us, informing us. You all are such wonderful guests on our show. Thank you again. And of course, let me go ahead and begin our closeout. To our audience, thank you for joining us once again. I always know that this is a choice we make, right? We've been talking about choices. This is a choice that we come every Monday night to enrich ourselves, to reach out, to connect and build this community that we have. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being a part of us here in this space and giving your kindness, giving us your ears, giving us who you are to be here with us. So thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Gamers. We'll be continuing on with our developers story, so be sure to join us for that Monday evening over at the Gamers channel here on Twitch at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you all around. Bye, everyone.